I'm Jonathan Von Bretten, along with Tom Horvath, Joe Gerstein, and a few others, Henry Steinberger, Hank Robb. I've been involved with Smart Recovery since the Rational Recovery days. I was at that first meeting in 1991. So I'm one of the founders if Bill is waiting to die off. I've been asked to speak today. Oh, before I do that, I would like to dedicate my presentation to a very good friend of mine who is also a very good friend of Smart Recovery, who unfortunately died a few years ago, and that is Dr. Emmett Velton. I had known Emmett since my days at the Albert Ellis Institute. He was one of my mentors in REBT. We became very good friends, and we used to do the Sunday morning trainings at the Smart Recovery conferences. So I'd like to dedicate this time to Emmett. I've been asked to go over 3 of the tools, and we're running a little late, so I have about an hour in which to do them. I wouldn't want to get anybody late for lunch, including me. So I'm going to go over the cost-benefit analysis, the hierarchy of values, and DISARM. Now, an interesting thing about DISARM is when DISARM first came out, I didn't like it, and Emmett didn't like it. So we used to toss a coin, and the loser had to present DISARM at the conference. I've since become very fond of DISARM. I'm going to start with the CBA, and I'm going to do these as demonstrations. So I'm going to ask people to come up, and we're going to do it on the flip chart. And we're going to do it that way because that's how you're going to do it in meetings. And I was asked to do this in such a way that it was relevant to actual face-to-face meetings. So the cost-benefit analysis. Who would like to help me with the cost-benefit analysis? Come on up, sir. And you are going to be given your very own handheld microphone, which National Geographic will insist that you return to them. You can stand up because you're going to be writing on the board.
And holding the microphone?
I'm sorry, what?
And holding the microphone?
And, well, okay. You can hand it to me while you're writing, if you want to. Cost-benefit analysis consists of 4 distinct questions. Or at least the way I do it, it consists of 4 distinct questions. The first question is, what do you like? Yeah, that's right. What do you like about your addictive or problem behavior? So what are a couple of things that, were you ever addicted to anything?
Sure.
Okay. If you weren't, you can make something up. Don't worry about it. What were you addicted to?
Alcohol.
Okay. So the first question is, what did you like about drinking? And if you can't come up with answers, I'm pretty sure we can find people here who can. So feel free to wander around and ask people.
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
I would start out by saying, 2 that are most prevalent and I hear most often and probably espouse most often is I like the buzz. And
okay. The buzz.
Am I to write this or are you writing?
I might as well write.
And also,
I learned how to recently. I like to show off.
Okay. and then it's a means to escape, to avoid, to escape, and so. Please, anybody else have
Come on, help
benefits.
this poor guy out.
A reward.
Reward.
A reward. I deserved it.
A social lubricant makes it easier to talk.
The illusion of power.
The illusion of power. I like that.
Yep.
I was a really good dancer.
I'm sorry, what was that?
He was a really good dancer. Truth or lie? Truth or lie? This side over here. Somebody have a benefit.
Relieve boredom.
Yeah, something to do. Dance, social.
Lubricant. And I would say relief of boredom was one
Boredom?
I've heard many, many times in many meetings.
Yeah, I'll put
Numb
it in
those
here somewhere.
emotions.
Boredom, by the way, is a big problem in recovery. All that time you used to spend drinking, drugging, finding alcohol, finding drugs, recovering from using them. Hey, you got to do something with that time.
Stress release.
Stress?
Stress relief.
Stress. Relieve stress.
And several variations on the relief, I'm sure.
Sure. Okay. We've got enough to start with. Now, this question, what kind of purposes do you think this question serves? Most people look at it and say, oh my God, you're trying to talk me into drinking again.
Exactly. And I can't, the immediate response I always get is, oh, there are no benefits. There are no
Yeah.
benefits.
A lot of people will say, there are no positives. And I reply to them, you're not stupid. You wouldn't do this if on some level you didn't see a positive. And so that is one of the reasons for this list, is to remind people they're not stupid. This also works pretty well as a relapse warning list. Did you ever think of that? Well,
I had not thought of it that way.
I thought of it.
That's why he's running them.
That's why I'm doing the presentation, yeah. Okay. If all you're thinking about is, gee, I really like the buzz. Oh, I did really well at work this week. Oh, power. I like power too, okay. Gee, I haven't got anything to do. I can dance. I can't dance either drunk or sober, so I've got to relieve the stress. How can I socialize? If all the person's thinking about are those things, those are all the arguments they're going to use to talk themselves into drinking again. So that is a great relapse prevention warning tool. What else could you use this list for? Yes?
As a basis for point 4 work.
Basics of?
As a basis for point 4 work.
Okay, for point forward?
To
Or-
point 4 work. To actually
Okay, to
collect
point
on
forward,
afterward.
point forward work. Okay, exactly right. Without even knowing it, the person has just identified quite a few things that may be skill deficits. If they're using alcohol to deal with stress, they probably need to learn some new stress reduction techniques. I could be wrong, but that's just a guess on my part. They use alcohol to socialize. Well, you're going to have to learn how to socialize without alcohol. Sorry about that. They use heroin to alleviate boredom. Well, they may have to find other things to do with their time. All of those are skill deficits. Depending on when the person's addiction set in, they either never learned these things or they need to relearn them. That's just the first of 4 questions. Okay, could you tear this down, please?
Post it someplace,
Oh. Okay. The second question is, what are some of the not so good things about your addiction? The first question can be thought of, what did your addiction do for you? Second question can be thought of as, what did your addiction do to you? Now, here is where I usually can't get people to shut up, because everybody is thinking about what it did to them. So what are some of the things, what are some of the not so good, euphemistically, results of alcohol, drug use, compulsive sexuality, gambling.
Screwed up relationships. Screwed up relationships. It's screwed up relationships.
Okay. Relationships suffer. Spelling suffers too.
Finances go to crap.
No money, finances.
No money. Oh. Now, it's not just the money you spend on the alcohol and drugs. It's the money you lose from lost time at work. It's the money that you lose from being so stupid, like I was, that you drop out of college with only 2 courses to go. So there's about, what? Or you get you fired from your job. You know, there's a whole lot of different ways. I had one client at one point, he could have bought a new house with what he spent on DWI funds. So there's there's a lot more to money than just what you spend on it, but that can be significant all by itself.
I would say hangover, feel like crap.
Hangovers?
Emotionally, physically.
Hangovers. Yeah, there are some people that's all it takes. The hangovers are so bad, they don't want to have those anymore.
There could be very serious health consequences.
Health.
Mental and physical.
Goals are undermined.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Goals are undermined.
Goals are
Goals?
undermined.
What goals?
Long-term goals or, yeah.
No. What goals, as in the person has none? What goals?
Yeah.
Oh, on this? No.
One back here.
Loss of family relationships and other relationships.
Yep.
ahead.
Relationships, trust.
Okay, relationships.
Trust.
Health is a big one.
Self-esteem, integrity, I heard.
Integrity.
Isolation. A record, yep. Guilt and shame, love those.
Yeah, legal issues,
dynamic
criminal
duo.
record.
Love it. Guilt, shame. Bring it on.
Yeah.
Guilt,
Some
shame.
of us, doctors, lawyers, mental health professionals, we can lose our licenses to practice if we get involved with alcohol and drugs. Okay.
Also, you can cause death. Somebody in our hometown of Madison actually
Deaths, accidents.
accidents and cause somebody else's life loss.
I don't usually put death down here because once you're dead, this is all pretty irrelevant. Yeah. What is the saying goes? Death is like stupidity. You don't know you're dead. You don't know you're stupid. But everybody around you knows you're dead and stupid. And by the way, with addiction, a lot of that's true too. A lot of people that have addictions are the last person to find out about it. Everybody around them figured it out years ago. Okay, this list is a great balance to the first list. In putting this up as a list, now we did it as a group effort, which you can do in your groups. It can also be done individually. As a group effort or as an individual effort, one of the things that keeps people addicted is they think about this whole list in its entirety, and they rarely think about this whole list in its entirety. So having this written down, and I emphasize written down, is very important. Now, Bill White mentioned working with people at lower educational levels. What if the person can't read or write? Well, they can cut pictures out of magazines to represent answers to each of these questions. Okay, can you take this one down? So essentially this, remember it's a cost-benefit exercise, that is the cost of that. That is what you pay for to get that. Is it worth it? And when it's presented that way, a lot of people realize, no, it's not worth it. But keeping that list of negatives is very important to prevent what's called euphoric recall, where the person only thinks about these. The next question. Somebody mentioned goals earlier. This is where goals come in. Next question is, what do I think I'll like about living addiction-free? What are some of the possible answers to that?
I like being more present and able to engage in life.
Okay, you feel more engaged with the world.
I know where my car is.
Being in control of your life.
You know where your car is, and you know it's not in the impound lot.
And control of your life, in charge.
Yeah, you're more in charge of your life.
People aren't hassling me all the time.
Get to keep my kids.
No one's hassling you all the time. Now they're just hassling you some of the time.
Well, they still spy on me, but they're not constantly hassling me.
Yeah. Once you stop drinking and drugging, a lot of the pressure gets off. Yeah, you can drive down the street, and if the cops pull you over, they can charge you with all sorts of things, but not DWI. I know that. I've been charged with running red lights, speeding. Yeah. But they never got me on DWI. Yes, sir.
Increased problem-solving techniques.
Better problem solving? Yes.
I like myself.
Better problem solving, and that is important because there is no guarantee in recovery that your life is going to be wonderful. The only guarantee that I give people in recovery is you will be better able to solve your problems. That's it. If you're expecting a brass band, you're going to be disappointed.
Joe over here is better self-esteem.
Sorry,
better self-esteem.
Better self-contained.
Esteem. I like
Self-esteem.
I like myself.
Well, since I spent way too many years with Albert Ellis, I will not write self-esteem.
I
But I will write self-acceptance.
I put that in Joe's one.
Oh, somebody just yelled out more money.
And basically just being present.
Being present.
Being present. Okay. Let's stop here. One more?
Yeah. Being able to make plans.
Being able to make plans and goals. Thank you. What question does this serve? What does this question serve?
Something to look forward to.
Something to look forward to. Nobody is going to give up something they love, drinking and drugging, if they don't at least have the hope of getting something better. And this is one of the ways they can get that hope. Now, this also serves as a couple of other things. It serves as a reality check, because there are some people that do have incredible fantasies about what life in recovery is going to be like. They think, oh, my spouse is going to come back to me. I've talked with their spouse. They're moving to California. They are not giving you a forwarding address. That's not going to happen. But if they've built their whole recovery on getting their spouse back or their old job back, it's not going to work. So there's a reality testing component to it. There are two kinds of motivation, depending on who you talk to. They're called different things. I use deprivation motivation and growth motivation. This is all deprivation motivation. This is stuff you want to get away from. Well, if you think about it, you're really, really hungry. You'll do a lot of things for food. Once you've eaten, you will be a little bit choosier about what you're willing to do for food. Deprivation motivation wears off. Growth motivation doesn't. Which is why I'm really glad that person mentioned goals. Once you attain one goal, is that it? Well, for some people it is, but most people will then go and put together another goal, and then another one. So let's say the person's goal is to graduate from high school. They graduate from high school. That might be as far as they want to go educationally, but they can then set more goals around work, family, making a living, or they can set a goal to go to college. They can continually improve on growth motivation goals, but deprivation motivation does wear off. Okay, time for the next one. Last question. What do you think you will hate, loathe, and despise about recovery? What will be the difficult parts of recovery? And I don't even ask for answers on this one. I give away the first answer. Boredom. One of the most common responses. Doesn't happen with everybody, but it's such a common response that I just give that one away. Many of the online meetings that I facilitate, what do I do now that I'm not drinking, is a huge topic. We don't realize it when we are drinking and drugging, but for many of us, most of, if not our entire waking existence, revolved around acquiring, using, and recovering from. Now, that doesn't mean that people who have addictions don't work. They work. Most people with addictions do have jobs. They do have families. But the addiction assumes a central role in their life. And once they stop doing it, there is a lot of time that they need to figure out what to do with. So boredom is a big one. What's another? Go ahead.
I got one here. Just. I'm sure you'll get into that. One that I hear a lot is this is forever. This is a long time. That I have to be not using.
I can never use. Anytime you want.
I can never use or do again, and that's a long time.
Okay.
Never again.
The problem of forever.
Yeah, forever.
Getting back to when you're dead, you don't know it, well, that's forever.
You lose your social circles, your friends.
Yeah,
That's big.
a lot
fear,
of
being
people
part of a group.
grew up with their using friends. Some of these people are lifelong friends, and they're not going to be able to hang around with them safely, at least for a while. So the person has to develop a social life in recovery. Not easy. Sounds easy, but it's not easy.
Consistency.
Consistency?
Being consistent, like making sure that they're attending, being present.
I cannot hear you without the microphone.
I was just referring to being present, making sure that they're actively engaging.
Being present, okay.
During recovery.
What about all those problems you had before? Go ahead.
Feeling your feelings. Feeling those damn feelings.
Oh, those damn things.
You'll actually feel worse, not better. Especially if you have any mental health problems.
Feelings. There's something that I do in my online meetings, and I post these every time I do a meeting, and I post them regardless of whether or not anybody asks me to. And those are rational coping statements. My feelings are not awful. I can stand them. I don't have to like my feelings, but they're not awful. I can stand them. And I post that at least once at every meeting that I do, because dealing with emotions is a huge one. Behind you.
I just wanted to come back to the boredom thing for just 1 second. I had a participant a couple weeks ago say, only in the Western world do we have the luxury of boredom. And I just wanted to share that.
I'm sorry, could you repeat what she said?
She was noting that in the Western Hemisphere, the concept of the luxury of boredom exists. It doesn't exist everywhere in the world, but it's
no, it doesn't
unique
exist everywhere in the
to
world.
our
You're
society.
Power. I got a lot of power when I was out there.
Power, okay.
I witnessed it.
Now, you don't like having that power? Oh, this is a wrong list for that. You want to go back to another list.
And he doesn't like the loss of power. Power he had in while he was using, he's losing when he's in recovery.
Isn't in recovery?
When he is in recovery, he's losing the power he had in his
Okay. So you feel less powerful. Oh, that's like the guy who said, when I was drinking and taking Valium, I wasn't afraid of anything. I stopped drinking and taking Valium. I'm afraid of everything. Okay.
Adding on the boredom, I would add like that adrenaline rush kind of thing, excitement that's not there, and having to recreate that and figure out safer ways to recreate it.
A safer way to?
Safer way to recreate excitement, adrenaline.
Excitement. That's a big one. That is part of the lifestyle. I had one person, and I'm going to call an end to this list at this point because I've got 2 more tools to go through. I had one person who described driving to New York with a suitcase full of money and a friend. They were going to exchange the money for a suitcase full of cocaine. They got to New York City, and they decided, okay, when they were supposed to exchange the suitcases, they hung on to the one with the money, grabbed the one with the cocaine, jumped back in their car. They were being chased through the streets of New York City at 3 o'clock in the morning by some very angry, well-armed drug dealers shooting at them. At the end of that story, he says, what kind of excitement can you offer me that's going to compare to that? I was stuck. I'm sorry. I just said, there's nothing I can do to top that. This list has a lot of the same advantages as the first list. These are all relapse warning symptoms. If the person is complaining about being bored, if the person is complaining about, it's gonna be forever, if they're worried about no social life, if they can't find any excitement, those are all going to be possible relapse warnings. And those are also all potential skill deficits that the person would need to address. Okay, so that's it for the cost-benefit analysis. By the way, all of these tools are in your members handbook or recovery handbook, and also in the facilitators handbook. I'd like to thank you for your time. Round of applause for Michael.
Thank you. You want this?
Yes, I do. Yeah, you can take that off. Okay, now I need a volunteer who'd like to help out with hierarchy of values. Come on up. That's good, because if I don't get a volunteer, I will go out and pick someone. Learned how to do that in Scotland. Hi, Gavin.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Hierarchy of values, I believe Joe Gerstein developed that one. Am I correct? Yes. Joe Gerstein developed the hierarchy of values. Hi, Joe. Working in the Massachusetts prison system, doing a meeting there. And it's actually a very powerful tool. In some ways, it's like the cost-benefit analysis, but the focus is different, and it gets at a lot of the same information in a different way. I should hand this nice gentleman the marker, too.
I can't spell so much.
Yeah.
I'll give it a go.
The hierarchy of values basically asks people to do two things. First is, list your values. What is important to you? Yeah, just write important. And once the person, the people in the group, or the person has listed 10, 15, 20 values of things that are important to them, you then ask them to, okay, list the top 5. The top 5 don't have to be in order. It might not even be possible to put them in order. But of those 15, 20, 25 values you just listed, what are the top 5 most important to you? Now, most people will list things in the top 5 like family. That's a big one. I'm sorry, I'll hold still. What's another big one?
Freedom.
Professional career, yeah. Job, career.
I'm just going to write work. It's easier.
Job or career, work. Yeah, I wouldn't have tried to spell professional either. Health. We need 2 more. Freedom. Love. Okay. Freedom and love.
Beatles.
Love is number 5. Now, one of the things that's very, very important about this is no 2 lists are going to be exactly the same. For some people, wife, family, kids, top 3. I'm not married, I could care less about those 3. My list is going to look a lot different. Tom's list is going to look different from mine. Brett's list is going to look different from both Tom's and mine. So these lists are highly individual, But can anybody tell me what is usually absent from these lists? What? Drugs? The addictive behavior. Most people do not sit there and say, my most important value is my right to drink, use drugs, or do whatever their addictive behavior is. They just don't list that right as a high value. But what does their behavior say? Their behavior says that's value number one. And that's an incredibly powerful realization for a lot of people to come to. And what really impressed me is that Joe found that in a prison system doing smart recovery with inmates, they came up with a lot of those techniques for the hierarchy of values. All right, so what is, the addictive behavior or their right to do. And again, we have to differentiate what is a value. Addictive behavior is not a value. The value statement is my right to do the addictive behavior, regardless of what everybody else says. If you'll excuse me for a moment. Now, there are 3 more questions, actually there's 5 more questions that can be done with the hierarchy of values. One is time traveling. What do I want my life to look like in the future? What am I currently doing to achieve that? And how do I feel about what I'm currently doing? So if, for example, I were to say, I really want to get my license in mental health counseling. What am I doing? I'm sitting at home smoking pot all day. Is that helping me towards my goal? No. Do I feel very good about it? Not really. But of course, I wasn't thinking like that at the time. But these questions get the person to think of, in the future, okay, what could I possibly be doing? Or what would I like to be doing in 4, 5, 6 years? What am I doing to achieve this? And how do I feel about it? If they don't like the answer, and a lot of times people don't like the answer, what could I do differently to get what I want? And if the person has identified the addiction as being one of the things that's getting in the way of what they want, well, something they could do differently is quite obvious. Stop the addiction. And the last one is, how would I feel if I actually got what I say I want, or if I actually made the change I'm talking about? And that can be really scary, because people may have set for themselves a goal that really isn't theirs. Like, I want to get my MBA. Well, how would you feel if you actually got the MBA? Oh, crap, I'd have to work for IBM. That's what my dad wants me to do. That's not the person's goal. So it goes back to their original hierarchy of values. What do they value? What do they want to do? It's entirely possible that the person has set this goal and their addiction is helping them to avoid achieving a goal they don't really want in the first place. How would I feel if I change or do what I want? Hopefully we're going to get, again, if they're not looking for a goal that they don't really want, which does happen, then they can make changes that will help them get a goal that they do want. As we learned with the cost-benefit analysis, having a goal that you actually look forward to as opposed to dreading. And I've talked with all sorts of people, You going to college? Yeah. What are you studying? Teaching. How do you like kids? Hate the damn things. Why are you studying teaching? Because my mother's a teacher, my father's a teacher. Okay, that's fine, but you're not going to like it. Very important for the person's goals and values to be consistent with what they really want. Not what I want for them, not what their parents want for them, not what their spouse wants for them, what they specifically want. Actually, I'm doing very well on time. Good. Gavin, thank you. I didn't work you as hard as the other guy, did I?
I know, I was waiting for more work.
All right. The next one is DISARM. It is an acronym. Smart Recovery's unofficial name is Acronyms Are Us. It stood originally for Destructive Self-Talk Awareness and Refusal Method. And then somebody pointed out, some people think in images. So it became modified to what it is now, Destructive Imagery Self-Talk Awareness and Refusal Method, which I really like. Because if you look at advertising, advertising makes a lot of its impact with images. I remember being like 4 or 5 years sober, driving through Providence on Route 95, and there is this billboard. And this billboard has an open bottle, and then there are all these streamers that look really like beer being poured out of a bottle into a glass. And I think, wow, I want some. That was done purely by imagery. Now, the self-talk part comes from REBT, because in rational emotive behavior therapy, we know that in order to actually get ourselves to do something, we have to talk ourselves into it. We have to make it seem like a good idea at the time, which is where the CBA and the HOV come in, because it's not a good idea. See how all of this starts to fall together? It's a really, really nice package we got going here. That's one of the reasons I like doing these things, because it is such a nice package. So once the person becomes aware of the destructive imagery, and I've got one more story about imagery, or the destructive self-talk, they can then do something about it. Last story about imagery. I was working in an inner city residential program, 90 days, for people with alcohol and drug problems. One of the things that we did was we introduced them to different things you could do without drinking or drugging. So like about once or twice a year, we took them to Rocky Point Park, because that was still in existence in those days. Now, the Rocky Point Chowder Hall has huge beer advertisements all over the place, including little beer advertisement placards on the table every 5 feet. So the people that I was with, I mean, I looked at the table, I saw the beer advertisements, I figured, no way am I leaving that there. And I picked them up and I put them on another table, but not on the one that I was on or anybody else. Throughout the day, no fewer than 3 clients came up to me and said, "Thank you for doing that." And I said, "Why?" They said, "I was starting to feel really nervous and I couldn't put my finger on why until you removed those placards." Those placards were designed to have an effect, and they had that effect. Yeah. So we do have to recognize that destructive imagery is as relevant as destructive self-talk, and in some cases probably precedes it, because you get the imagery first, and then you make yourself think it's a good idea. or at least acceptable. Okay, once we've gotten to that point, what do we do about it? The first part of the disarm technique are 4 questions. Oh, thank you. Oh, I didn't realize how dry I was. Thank you very much. Yeah. First question is, do I have to give in to this urge just because it's intense? Well, have you ever had an intense urge before that for whatever reason you couldn't give in to it? Like, there was a drug spell and your dealer didn't have any? Yeah? Did you feel really intense urges to use then? Yeah? Did you use? No. Did you die? No. Well, you're not going to die this time either. Only this time you can resist it by choice. And wouldn't you rather resist something by choice than because your stupid dealer ran out? So do I have to give in to this urge just because it's intense? Will it be awful, to use an Albert Ellis saying, if I don't go into this give into this urge? Now, I've always wanted to have an office where I have a large pot of boiling water and a pulley. So when somebody says something is awful, I can say, okay, would you rather be going through this, or would you rather I hook you up to the pulley and lower you into the boiling water? Unfortunately, I've never been able to get an office so equipped, but the imagery works. Awful is an exaggeration. Terrible, horrible, awful, catastrophic. They have real meanings. But 99% of the time when we use them in our own heads, we are not talking about world cataclysms. We're talking about, oh, the line in this bank is awful. Come back later. In fact, one of the things that I do to get people... You like that one? Okay. One of the things that I do with people that have problems with low frustration tolerance is, okay, next time you go to the supermarket, get in the longest line. Get in the longest line behind a person with a full grocery cart and a large jar of pennies that you're going to use to pay for it. So is it awful? No, it's not awful. It's uncomfortable. It's inconvenient.
What about the wood chipper?
That's another image that I use. The wood chipper image is, okay, would you rather go through this allegedly awful event that you're describing, or would you rather that I took you outside, fire up the wood chipper, and lower you very, very slowly through the wood chipper, feet first? You go head first, it's over almost instantly. So feet first, because I want you to feel it. While I blare Justin Bieber music in the background. Most people would rather go through the nasty divorce, believe me. Okay. Another variation, is it really unbearable to give into this? Well, that's basically another version of awfulizing. But the one that I really like, and we have a special name for this one, am I entitled to quit an addiction without experiencing urges? Has this urge somehow violated a contract with me not to show up? And I don't know who named it this. I suspect it was Joe, but I don't know for sure. We call this the, do you have a note from your mother? Question. Do you have a note from your mother that says you don't have to experience any urges while you're in recovery? And the other thing I point out to you is how long are you doing your addiction? Most people have been doing their addiction for quite some time by the time they show up on our doorstep. 10, 20, 30 years are not uncommon periods of time. So I asked him, okay, you've been doing this for 10, 20, 30 years. Do you honestly expect that you're not going to have an urge when you stop? And most people, if they really think about it, say, no, you're right, that doesn't make much sense at all. Urges are a normal, natural part of recovery. They're not pleasant. And that's another thing that I like about this is we never get stuck trying to argue someone into liking something they don't like. What we do with the it's not awful, it's not unbearable, you don't have a note from your mother, sorry about that, is we try to make the discomfort go from this big to this big. It's still there. Still might even be big, but it's not as big. It's smaller and more manageable. And so that is pretty much disarm. It's exactly what that's only the first part of disarm. That's the thinky part. The next part is even more fun, or at least it is to me. How many people here have vivid imaginations? How many people here have something that at least passes for an imagination? Okay, that's most of you. The second part of the disarm technique is an imagination technique. You somehow come up with some kind of image for your urge. You personify it. Now, this is purely imaginary. We don't suggest that, a devil with forked tail and horns is going to jump up beside you. But you can imagine that if you want. The key to imagining the image is it has to be someone or something that under no conditions would you argue with or say yes to. And over the years, I've heard some great images. Typical images are pushy salesmen. You want to buy a washer? I don't need a washer. You want to buy a washer? Got a good deal on a washer. I don't want a washer. You sure you don't want a washer? No, I don't want a washer. Why don't you want a washer? Have you noticed that as long as you argue with that, they have a comeback? Want to buy a washer? No, get out. Huh? I don't want to buy a washer. Get out. Why don't you want to buy a washer? I don't want a washer. Get out. You sure you don't want a washer? Get out. So the pushy salesperson is a good image for a lot of people. But there are some buttes out there. My personal favorite is the tantruming 2-year-old.
I want my methamphetamine. I want my methamphetamine.
Right, kid. Number one, if I'm into methamphetamine, I'm not sharing it. And number two, almost no parents, no matter how zonked they are going to give methamphetamine to a 2-year-old, no matter how much the kid screams. There are some outliers, but they are very few and very far between. And you can read about them in the National Enquirer. So you come up with some kind of really ridiculous. Now, think about it. Tantruming 2-year-old. Do you argue with them? No. Do you try to negotiate with them? No. Do you try to reason with them? No, not unless you want to do it all day. Basically, the more you feed into it, the more they tantrum. Same thing with the urge. Another really good, and I almost fell off my chair laughing when I saw this, doing an online meeting. And I said, okay, what images do people have for their urge when they use disarm? And I got all the usual ones. The salesman, the bully, all of that. And then one person said, my ex-spouse. Brilliant. Here was someone that under no conditions was this person willing to say yes to for anything. Yeah. So whenever they wanted to drink, it was a female in this particular case, a woman, she would say, okay, I imagine my ex-husband trying to talk me into drinking, and there's no way I'll give that son of a bitch that satisfaction. So the ex-spouse is a really good one for certain members of your population who will relate to it very, very well. Ex-boss is a good one. Current boss is a good one for some people. And those are all of the different kinds of imagery techniques. But again, the key component is do not argue with the image. As soon as you start to argue with the image, reason with the image, debate the image, you are engaged with that urge. Like me with the washer salesperson, as long as I kept saying, no, I don't want a washer, I'm inviting the comeback. Well, why don't you want to buy a washer? This is a really good washer. I don't understand why you don't want to buy it. Just substitute one word. This is really good wine. I don't know why you don't want to buy it. I am not going to win that argument if I try to do it for a long period of time. Basically, my best hope is to just say, no, get out. And that's it. With the imagery technique, in your imagination, not in real life, you can be as violent as you want to. You can be as profane as you want to. If you want to swear a blue streak, go right ahead. Just make sure that that image knows it's not welcome. Well, I guess we have lunch early. Thank you all.